What is good, Nio family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Nio stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down what's going on with Nio's share price based off the news data and technicals that just came out, and what we should be watching for in the share price. Now, before I break anything down about this, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Neo community as a whole. And the last things, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, whether it's $1 or $100, it's up to you. You're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $3,000. And the best part is, any could be a free Neo share. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends today, so make sure you check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. NIO is down 6.76% for the day, closing at $9.80. And overall, this is what the structure of the share price is looking like. We got a very nice pump leading into this whole deliveries report, as we saw a lot of consumer discretionaries outperforming the market and performing very, very well. But then after the report came out, I told you guys that we're likely not going to have the best of reactions. NIO is likely going to end up coming down pretty hard. I mentioned to you guys we had this gap down here at the 9.85 level and also another one down here. Now, I told you guys we could actually go either way, of course, but I told you I was more likely leaning more in the bearish direction. I just wasn't very happy about, I wasn't really excited after what NIO reported. However, I'm still very optimistic about the longer term future of this company. I haven't really lost faith in it or anything like that. But I just want to note that in the very beginning, when NIO reported this deliveries, I had higher expectations. I did not really meet my expectations. So there are hardships going on right now. But once again, I do believe they will prevail going forward. But for now, we have to accept what ended up happening. Now, I want to talk about the market as well, what's actually going on before I talk about NIO. The first thing you have to remember is the fact that the data that came out today was not really too significant with the whole mortgage data, manufacturing data. We also had a Fed speaker. Bullard was speaking in the beginning, which caused the market to drop, but the market ended up holding up afterwards. And then for tomorrow, we actually have some JOLTS jobs openings data coming out. We technically want this number to be low. We do not want way too many job openings. We want we want there to be pain in the job sector, at least from the standpoint of the Fed. And how is the market going to respond will depend on other factors. Now, another bearish piece of news that came out is OPEC. They're actually going to be cutting production by 1.16 million barrels per day. This was likely going to end up causing inflation to go up and incentivizing the Fed to be more hawkish. So please be very careful as news like this continues to come out. However, this already came out early in the morning, and yet the market didn't seem to care. So for the time being, the market is still holding up. And we were actually hit with some bullish news. That's because Janet Yellen started speaking again. And she said that right now the banks are stabilizing. There's a lot of support for them. They're still very strong. And she just went off over and over and over again about that. She also mentioned the fact that we're once again going to see very strong growth. We shouldn't necessarily be too worried about the banks. And she said that for the time being, the banking system is well capitalized and very liquid. And she mentioned the fact that the Federal Reserve and the Fed, they're out there to support them and nobody should worry about them. So this was actually some good news for the markets. We're getting some very mixed news, but the real question is, which way will the market go? Which way will NIO go? Now, for NIO, if you guys missed my previous video, we have about 10,378 deliveries just for the month of March, a bit of a decrease compared to the month of February. I actually have the chart right here. Here are the numbers. So this one's January, this is February, and this is March. And the light rectangles are actually going to be from last year's, and then the darker ones are going to be from this year. You can see that our numbers are pretty close to what we achieved last year, so that's not really a big sign of improvement. It's actually showing us that demand is slowing down, and also NIO is underperforming compared to some competitors like Li Auto and also Tesla. But there are other EVs like XPeng that are going through some very similar phases right now. So NIO needs to work very hard on competing with the other competitors out there, and they have to do a much better job. However, it's not the end of the world because we have some bullish news. 20 million power swaps were just met right now. We're actually continuing to see growth in this company, and NIO users have completed over 20 million battery swaps. To me, that is awesome news. I see this continue to grow as time goes on. However, it's not enough bullish news to actually offset the downside we're continuing to see on NIO. But I just want to note that it was incredible to see that. Now, for volume, we have 56 million, well above the average volume. We're actually still down on high volume. So that's actually not the best of signs. This means that there's still high selling pressure and a lot of shorting going on for NIO after the news that came out. And because they came a little short on deliveries, they just barely met their goal of between 31 to 33,000 for the quarter. They barely met it with 31,000 in total. Once again, guys, not the best of news. I'm pretty sure the short volume is going to start increasing. And we're likely going to see the short interest, right here, the short interest start to spike up a little bit on NIO. It was on a bit of an uptrend right before the deliveries report came out, as if someone knew something. And now we actually saw it a little bit lower, but I do think we're going to continue to see this increase. Now, seeing this on an uptrend right here, the bigger peaks in the short interest have been correlated with NIO underperforming in terms of its price action. And we also tend to see NIO green 55% of the time on Tuesdays. However, I'm still going to be very careful because we have an extra catalyst. The price price ratio came up, but it's likely going to cool off a little bit today once we see the data. And on top of that, that's basically what's affecting NIO. Now, what am I seeing for NIO? Is NIO going to bounce? Is NIO going to tank? Well, not necessarily. What I'm thinking is, for now, I think NIO did try to get a bounce off this very important 9.68 level. And I think we might see NIO try to get back to $10. And it's likely going to be very weak and end up failing. And we could be forming almost like head and shoulders. This looks like this could be like a left shoulder ahead and maybe a right shoulder. If it fails to break above 10, it's most likely going to end up playing out, which means that we could see a small bounce, just a small one, nothing too significant. See NIO chop around a bit and then eventually start to cool off even more. And I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see another red day and we see NIO slowly come down to fill this gap in the low nines. Now, I am a NIO fan. I do hold NIO and I still believe in the company, of course, but this is what the chart is starting to tell us. We're seeing lots of weakening momentum. MACD is still open, and overall, not a whole lot else that's going on. That's the hourly. On the daily, NIO is continuing to actually see weakening momentum as the MACD is getting tighter and tighter. The PPO is getting closer to a crossover. Be very careful. Now, whether NIO ends up tanking very hard or not may also depend on the markets. I just want to note that right now SPY is quite unpredictable. It's very tricky to predict right now because we're stuck between 411 and 408. Which direction are we going to break? Really depends on what happens. And if we do get a breakout, the real question is, could we keep going? Because the RSI is pretty overbought. We're very overbought. We've been extending for a very long period of time. But it is possible for us to keep going, but I'm not really leaning in that direction. We're also starting to see some weakness in tech. I am thinking that we might see Microsoft and some tech stocks out there push up just a little bit more, get a few dollars up there before they end up coming down more. And I believe the market is due for a bit of a pullback. I think we need a healthy pullback. There's nothing wrong with that. SPY has 3 giant gaps, below. We don't have to fill all of them yet, but we should actually fill at least one of them soon. And I am thinking the market could be in a topping process as there's been a lot of shorting today that was going on. We've seen millions of new shorting positions that came out, more puts being bought in large put sweeps. And we might see SPY retraced at least to the 0.236 around the 404 zone. I don't know if it's going to happen yet or if we're going to push up a little bit more and then start to just decrease in value. And it's very difficult because we're pumping on very low volume and there's not really a whole lot fundamentally or any major piece of news that's actually causing this price action besides Janet Yellen helping to fuel more positive sentiment. That's really all it really is. There's not a whole lot backing this. So I'm thinking the market might push up a little bit and then come down, or we just start, downtrending slowly just a bit to establish a higher low before we do see a bullish continuation later. So for NIO, what does that tell us? That tells us that if the market ends up dropping a little harder, that could drag NIO down even harder, and NIO could come down to 9.2 pretty fast. But if the market holds up, right, just like how we pumped near the end of the day, NIO did bounce off 9.6 and come all the way up to 9.8. What I'm thinking is, if the market holds up, we might see NIO try to get to 10, then come down, trade a little sideways, and the downside may take a little longer. But overall, I do believe she's eventually going to come down to the lower nines. It may take another week, but I do believe it's most likely going to happen. For tomorrow, I'm thinking Nio is going to bounce, try to get to 10, end up failing, trade sideways, and close a little red around 9.7 to 9.6, somewhere around there. And she might get closer to 9.5 either tomorrow or maybe going into like Wednesday. I think the odds heavily favor another red day, unfortunately. And that's essentially what I'm seeing on Nio. All right, so I thank each and every one of you so much for listening. Please have an absolutely incredible rest of the day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Nio to the moon, because the long-term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.